Step out of the vehicle. What are you doing in this neighborhood?
Sir, I live 3 blocks over. I'm on my way to the courthouse.
This license says Bell Heights. That's across town.
I moved recently. Address change is pending. Everything's legal.
Out of the car, now.
Officer, I'm an attorney. You've got my ID. I haven't done anything wrong.
Tuesday morning, October 12th, 2023, 9:47 a.m. The morning sun cast long shadows across Montgomery Street as the city awakened to another day. Downtown was alive, the hiss of bus brakes, the click of heels on pavement, office workers clutching coffee cups. Cars moved in stuttering waves through traffic lights, each driver wrapped in their own urgency. David Harris checked his watch as he guided his black Honda Accord through the intersection of Montgomery and 5th. Running exactly on time. His dark blue suit was pressed to perfection, white shirt crisp, red tie perfectly knotted. In the passenger seat, his leather briefcase overflowed with case files for his 10:30 a.m. court hearing, State v. Morrison, a wrongful termination case that had consumed the last 4 months of his life. Then he noticed the patrol car in his rearview mirror. 2 blocks now, same distance. His chest tightened. Then came the lights, red and blue, slicing through the ordinary morning like a knife. Before we dive into what happens next, hit that like button and subscribe, then drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. Your engagement helps us bring stories like this to light. Now, let's see what happened to David Harris. David's heart spiked as he checked his speedometer. 28 in a 30 zone. Registration current. Renewed 2 months ago. He signaled right, pulling to the curb in front of a Starbucks where a small cluster of people stood outside, scrolling through their phones. Through the mirror, he watched the officer emerge. White male, mid-30s, stocky build, crew cut catching the sunlight. Nameplate, Hutchins. The officer's hand rested on his service weapon as he approached. David lowered his window completely, both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. He'd been through this before, twice in college, once as a first-year associate. Each time he'd done everything right. Each time he'd walked away angry and humiliated, but safe. Officer Hutchins stopped at the window, eyes hidden behind mirrored aviators. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation, just the command. "Good morning, officer," said David, keeping his voice steady, professional. "May I ask why you pulled me over?" License and registration, now. Hutchins's jaw was tight, his tone sharp. David moved slowly, deliberately. "I'm reaching for my wallet in my jacket pocket. Registration is in the glove compartment." He narrated every movement, a survival technique inherited from his father, who'd learned it from his father before him. His fingers found the leather wallet, pulled it free. He handed over his license, the one he'd been meaning to update since moving 6 weeks ago. The registration came next, crisp and official. Hutchins studied the documents, eyes flicking between the license and David's face. "This address current?" "No, sir. I recently moved. I live at 1847 Riverside Drive now, apartment 4B. I have my lease agreement in my briefcase if you need to see it." "Step out of the vehicle." The command hit David like cold water. "Excuse me?" "I said, step out of the vehicle. Now." Hutchins's hand moved closer to his weapon. David's mind raced. He was a criminal defense attorney. He knew his rights. He also knew that rights meant nothing when you were black, in a car, facing an officer who'd already decided you were guilty of something. "Officer, I'm an attorney. I have a court appearance in 40 minutes. Can you please tell me what this is about? I wasn't speeding. My registration is current." "Are you refusing to comply?" Hutchins stepped back, hand now firmly on his weapon. "Step out of the vehicle now, or I will remove you forcibly." Through the Starbucks window, David could see faces turning, phones lifting. He thought of his mother, his sister's 8-year-old son, Marcus, who wanted to be a lawyer just like Uncle David. He thought of his colleague Jennifer, waiting at the courthouse. "I'm complying," David said quietly. He opened the door slowly, stepping out onto the pavement with his hands visible. His briefcase sat in the passenger seat, his future balanced on leather and case law. The morning sunlight caught the red of his tie as he stood, his dark blue suit now a uniform of respectability that meant nothing in this moment. The morning air was cool against his face. Around him, the city continued its rhythm, but he felt utterly alone, spotlit by injustice in broad daylight. Hutchins moved in fast. "Hands on the vehicle. Spread your legs." "Officer, this is hands on the vehicle now." David placed his palms flat against the warm metal of his black car's roof. The position was humiliating, bent slightly at the waist, legs apart, in full view of the growing crowd of onlookers. He felt Hutchins' hands moving over his body, patting down his suit jacket, his pants pockets, his ankles. Professional hands, but rough, invasive. His white shirt wrinkled under the pressure of the search. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Hutchins asked, his breath hot against David's ear. "I work here. I'm an attorney at Morrison and Blake, 3 blocks from here. I have a court appearance." "Yeah? What kind of attorney?" "Litigation, civil rights, and employment law." David heard the skepticism in his snort. A second patrol car pulled up behind the first, and 2 more officers emerged, 1 black, 1 Hispanic. The black officer, whose nameplate read Williams, approached cautiously, his expression unreadable. "Hutch, what have we got?" "Suspicious vehicle. Driver's license address doesn't match his story. Says he lives in this neighborhood, but his ID says otherwise. Says he's a lawyer." The way Hutchins said lawyer made it sound like an accusation. Williams glanced at David, then at the black Honda, then back at Hutchins. Something passed across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or discomfort, but he said nothing. "Turn around," Hutchins ordered. When David complied, he found himself staring at handcuffs. The metal was cold, unyielding as it closed around his wrists with a mechanical click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "This is a violation of my 4th Amendment rights," David said, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "You have no probable cause. You're being detained for investigation. We have reasonable suspicion that you may be involved in criminal activity." "What criminal activity? Driving while black?" The words hung in the air like an accusation, and David saw Williams flinch. But still, the officer said nothing. The third officer, whose nameplate read Martinez, stood by the second patrol car, speaking quietly into his radio. "Search the vehicle," Hutchins ordered Williams. David watched, helpless, as Williams opened his passenger door and reached for his briefcase. "That contains confidential attorney-client materials. You need a warrant." "We have probable cause to search for evidence of criminal activity," Hutchins interrupted. "Your cooperation is noted." It wasn't cooperation, it was coercion, conducted in the theater of a public street. Williams unzipped the briefcase. Manila folders spilled out. Legal briefs, deposition transcripts, handwritten notes covered in David's cramped script. The officer flipped through them, his dark fingers careful on the pages, as if he understood he was handling something that shouldn't be touched. "It's all legal documents," Williams said quietly. "Keep looking." The search expanded. Hutchins opened the back door of the black sedan, running his hands under the seats. Martinez joined him, pulling up floor mats, checking the trunk. They went through David's gym bag in the back seat, workout clothes, a pair of running shoes, a water bottle. They opened his glove compartment, scattering insurance papers and the vehicle manual across the passenger seat. They found his laptop bag and went through it, powering on his computer, scrolling through files. David stood on the sidewalk, handcuffed, his dark blue suit and red tie now symbols of a respectability that had been stripped away. He watched strangers rifle through his life. A woman in a business suit stopped walking, her phone pointed at the scene. A man in a construction vest shook his head, muttering something David couldn't hear. 2 teenagers whispered to each other, their eyes wide. "This is racial profiling," David said loudly, making sure his voice carried. "I'm being detained without probable cause. I'm being searched without a warrant. This is a violation of my constitutional rights." "Sir, you need to calm down," Martinez said, approaching him with palms up, a placating gesture that felt like mockery. "I am calm. I'm also being illegally detained." A white woman in her 60s emerged from the Starbucks, her face flushed with anger. "What's going on here? What did he do?" "Ma'am, please step back," Martinez said. "I'm a witness. I'm recording this. This man was just driving. I saw the whole thing." More people gathered now, a small crowd forming on the sidewalk. David felt their attention like heat on his skin, some sympathetic, some curious, some uncomfortable, turning away as if witnessing something too intimate, too painful. "Nothing here," Williams said finally, closing the briefcase. His voice was flat, professional, but David caught something else beneath it. Shame, perhaps. Hutchins wasn't satisfied. "We're taking him in for verification." "Verification of what?" David demanded. "You have my license. You can run it. You'll see I have no warrants, no criminal record. You'll see I'm exactly who I say I am." But Hutchins was already moving, his hand firm on David's upper arm. "You're coming to the station." The back seat of a patrol car smells like industrial cleaner and desperation. David sat with his hands cuffed behind him, the position forcing his shoulders into an uncomfortable angle. His suit jacket bunched awkwardly, red tie now askew. Through the metal grate separating him from the front seat, he could see the back of Hutchins's head, the red tint creeping up the officer's neck. Williams drove, his eyes occasionally meeting David's in the rearview mirror. The radio crackled with dispatches, a domestic disturbance on Oak Street, a fender bender near the mall, the mundane emergencies of an ordinary day. David's court hearing was in 35 minutes. His phone was in an evidence bag somewhere in the trunk of his black Honda, which had been left at the curb, his briefcase and laptop secured, but his professional life derailed. Jennifer would be trying to reach him. Judge Teller hated delays. The Morrison case, 4 months of work, might be dismissed for failure to appear. "My firm will file a complaint," David said, his voice cutting through the silence. "I will personally sue this department. This is unlawful detention. This is harassment." "You can file whatever you want," Hutchins said without turning around. "We're just doing our job. Your job is to protect and serve. Your job is to uphold the Constitution. This is neither." Williams's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The city passed outside the windows, the courthouse where David should be walking in right now, the coffee shop where he met clients, the park where he ran every Sunday morning, all of it familiar, all of it suddenly foreign, as if he were seeing his own city through the bars of a cage. "I've lived here for 7 years, David said, speaking to Williams now, trying to reach the humanity he'd glimpsed in the other man's face. "I pay taxes, I vote, I volunteer at the legal aid clinic on weekends. I help people. What did I do to deserve this?" Williams said nothing, but his jaw tightened. "You know this is wrong. You know it." The station appeared ahead, a squat concrete building that David had visited dozens of times to meet clients, to review evidence, to negotiate with prosecutors. He'd always walked in through the front door, his briefcase in hand, his professional courtesy a shield. Now he was entering through the back, in handcuffs, reduced to a number and a suspicion. The processing area was fluorescent bright and industrial cold. David was fingerprinted, photographed, emptied of his possessions. His belt, his wallet, his wedding ring, all of it bagged and tagged. He stood against the height chart for his mugshot, the placard in his hands, displaying a number that would follow him forever, appearing in database searches, whispered in courtrooms. His dark blue suit was wrinkled now, his white shirt no longer crisp, his red tie loosened and hanging unevenly. "I need to make a phone call," David said to the desk sergeant, a heavy-set woman with tired eyes who'd been doing this job too long. "I'm entitled to a phone call." "You'll get one when we're done processing." "I have a court appearance. I need to notify my firm." "You'll get your call." David was led to a holding cell, a small concrete room with a metal bench bolted to the wall and a toilet without a seat. The door clanged shut with a finality that made his stomach drop. Through the small window reinforced with wire mesh, he could see officers moving past, their conversations muffled. He sat on the bench and closed his eyes. The suit that had been pressed this morning was wrinkled now, the knees dusty from being forced against his black car. His wrists ached where the handcuffs had bitten into skin. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the rage and humiliation churning in his chest. He thought of all the clients he'd represented who'd described this exact feeling, the helplessness, the fury, the deep understanding that the system designed to protect citizens could just as easily destroy them. He'd listened, he'd believed them, but until this moment, he hadn't truly understood. This is what they do. This is how they break you. Time moved strangely in the cell. It could have been 20 minutes or 2 hours when he finally heard voices outside the door, raised, urgent. "What do you mean you arrested David Harris?" The voice was deep, authoritative. Chief Robert Morrison. David recognized it from city council meetings, from press conferences. The chief was a black man in his late 50s, a 30-year veteran who'd risen through the ranks fighting battles David could only imagine. "Sir, Officer Hutchins brought him in for—" "I don't care what Hutchins said. Do you know who David Harris is?" "Sir, he was driving with an outdated license, and He's an attorney. He litigates police misconduct cases. He's argued before the state Supreme Court, and you brought him in like a common criminal without cause?" There was a pause, heavy with implication. "Get him out now, and get Hutchins in my office immediately." But the machinery of bureaucracy doesn't reverse quickly. By the time the cell door opened, David had been processed fully into the system. His fingerprints were in the database, his mugshot was in the files, his arrest record, though it would later be expunged, existed. Chief Morrison met him in the hallway outside the holding cells, his face tight with anger and embarrassment. "Mr. Harris, I cannot apologize enough. Save it," David said quietly. "I want my possessions, I want my car, and I want the name of every officer involved in this stop." Of course, absolutely, this was a terrible mistake. It wasn't a mistake, it was racism, it was profiling, it was a systematic violation of my rights conducted by an officer who saw a black man in a nice neighborhood and decided I didn't belong there. Morrison's expression was pained. "Officer Hutchins will be disciplined." "Disciplined?" David's voice rose. "He should be fired. He should be charged. He violated my Fourth Amendment rights. He conducted an illegal search. He arrested me without probable cause. In any other context, this would be kidnapping." The chief nodded slowly. "I understand your anger. I need you to know this doesn't represent—" "Don't." David held up his hand. "Don't tell me this doesn't represent your department. This is your department. This is what your officers do. The only reason I'm being released is because you happen to know who I am. But what about the people you don't know? The people who don't have law degrees and connections? What happens to them?" The question hung unanswered in the sterile hallway. David was given his possessions in a manila envelope. His phone showed 43 missed calls. Jennifer, his boss, his mother, his wife. The court hearing was long over. Judge Keller had granted a continuance after Jennifer explained the situation, but the damage was done. His black Honda was still on Montgomery Street, a ticket tucked under the windshield wiper. The briefcase was there, undisturbed, but everything felt violated, contaminated. David sat in the driver's seat for a long time before starting the engine. Around him, the city continued its rhythm, people heading to lunch, living their lives, unaware that in the space of 2 hours, everything had changed. The story broke 3 days later. "Prominent attorney arrested without cause," read the headline in the Tribune. The Bodycam footage, obtained through David's public records request, went viral within hours. Millions watched as David, in his dark blue suit, white shirt, and red tie, calmly explained who he was, where he was going, only to be handcuffed and searched beside his black Honda while citing his constitutional rights in real time. Officer Hutchins was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The review board found multiple violations of department policy and civil rights law. He was terminated 6 weeks later, though his union fought the dismissal. David filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city, the police department, and Hutchins personally. The case was settled 14 months later for $23 million, one of the largest such settlements in the state's history. The city also agreed to mandatory retraining on racial bias, new policies on traffic stops, and the implementation of an independent oversight committee. At the press conference announcing the settlement, David stood at a podium surrounded by civil rights attorneys and community activists. He wore a dark blue suit, not the same one from that morning, but similar, a red tie. His voice was steady, but his eyes held the weight of those hours in the holding cell. "This is not about money," he said. "This is about accountability. This is about sending a message that constitutional rights matter, that black lives matter, that we cannot accept a system where the color of your skin determines whether you're treated as a citizen or a suspect." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the crowded room. "I was fortunate. I had resources, connections, knowledge of the law. But every day, people who look like me face this same harassment without recourse. Every day, traffic stops escalate into violence. Every day, families lose sons and daughters to a system that sees threat instead of humanity. This settlement is a start, but it's only a start. Real change requires all of us, officers, officials, citizens, to acknowledge the problem and commit to doing better." The questions came fast after that, but David's mind was elsewhere. He thought of Williams, the black officer who'd searched his briefcase and said nothing. He thought of the woman from Starbucks who'd recorded the stop, whose testimony had been crucial to his case. He thought of his nephew, Marcus, still too young to understand why Uncle David had been on the news, but old enough to remember. That evening, David drove home along Montgomery Street. Traffic moved in its familiar patterns. Office workers hurried to their cars. The Starbucks where he'd been pulled over was busy with the afternoon rush. Everything looked the same. Everything had changed. He pulled into his parking spot at 1847 Riverside Drive, apartment 4B, the address that had been deemed suspicious enough to justify his detention. He sat in his black Honda for a moment, his hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, remembering. Then he grabbed his briefcase, now containing the settlement agreement, and walked inside. Tomorrow, there would be other clients, other cases, other fights for justice. But tonight, he was simply a man coming home from work, carrying the weight of a story that was both uniquely his and painfully universal. The system had tried to break him. Instead, he had broken through it, scarred, angry, but undefeated. And in the morning, when he drove to work, he would do so with his head high and his license updated, knowing that his 2 hours in handcuffs cost the city $23 million, and perhaps more importantly, had cost Officer Hutchins his badge. It wasn't justice, not really, but it was accountability. And sometimes that's where justice begins.
David Harris's story is a powerful reminder that the fight for justice and equality continues every single day. If this story moved you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that matters. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment below telling me your thoughts on this case and what we can do to create real change in our communities. Remember, Accountability begins with awareness, and your engagement helps spread these important stories. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, where we continue to shine a light on injustice and demand better from those sworn to protect and serve.